Yes. Okay. So tomorrow schedule, whatever the people want on the illustrious Xmas holiday. Tomorrow morning? Oh, yeah? I'm around, I don't know. Yes, the question, if people want a 6:45 or 7:45, whatever. Maybe we'll do later. Let's see what they say. Okay. I go with the majority, okay. The consensus, whatever they say. We're on, now we're already on hay. Moving along. Well, you know it, hopefully there's a lot to learn. Good morning, Ralph. How are you? Okay, we're on Hayam and Aleph. We are on 5A. We're on 5A1. Ela Amar Rav Zera Hamani Achiravi. The Gemara is in search of finding who is the author of our Mishnah. You see in the first column, 5A1, first column. What's the issue here? The Mishnah stated that if you place a item, if a Balabayis, the man on the inside. Good morning, Ralph.
Morning, Rabbi.
Ralph, we want to know about tomorrow. What time works for you and everybody? We're trying to figure out the consensus of the majority. But the question, see, David's saying hello.
Ralph,
Hi, David. How are you?
we need you back. It's not the same.
Soon.
Okay.
Um,
Hanukkah.
tomorrow, I have to be there. I have to be at shul at 7:30.
You have to be in on 7:30. So therefore, according to you, the only time that would work tomorrow for you would be 6:45, 6:45. The regular time.
I can still put you in my car and watch you till I get there.
Right. And you'll concentrate on the driving at the same time.
Yeah, I can do
Okay.
that. I can chew gum too.
Okay, so let's, we're on Hayam and Aleph. And then we are on, so Elam Rav Zera Hamani Moni Levi, Rabbi Achirami, the author of our Mishnah Achirim, because we're trying to find out which opinion holds that you do not, when you place an item down on Shabbat, we said to violate Shabbat, there has to be a two-step process, something called an akira, an uprooting an item, picking up an item, and also in one domain, in a certain type of domain, and putting it down in another domain. That's called a hanacha, putting it down. But we said you need to put it down in a place that has a certain surface, 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, which is about 15 inches by 15 inches. If you put it down, we gave an example, David, of if you put it down, let's say you have a tissue box outside your house, in the wall, in the street, next to nice convenience for the people. But if you put it down on the tissue box is a very small surface. Then it's not called putting it down in a place that would be violating the Shabbat. So, but the hand of a person is also it's smaller than it's not larger than a tissue box. And yet the Mishnah states that if you place it in the hand of a person, it's considered that you did the hanacha, you did the placing down, that would be considered a violation of the Shabbat. And also the Mishnah stated if you took it out of the hand of a person, if the ani, the poor man in the street, extended his hand from public to private, and he took it out of the hand of the balabayit, and he moved it into public and he placed it down, we say that's called an akira. He uprooted it from the hand of the balabayit, the man of the house. But the hand of the house, it wasn't resting on a proper place. It was only resting on less than 15 inches by 15 inches. So that's the Gemara's question. Who is the author of the Mishnah who states that, you know what? We don't require this rule of 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Zera. Rav Zera says, it's Hamani, the author is Achirim. Achirim, the Tanya. We learned to the bright. Achirim Omrim. Achirim say, Hazoreik, if someone goes ahead and throws an item, morning Simon, happy Hanukkah. If someone throws an item, what did you say, Ralph?
Kodesh Tov.
Yeah, Chodesh Tov also. That's right. Yes. Today, Today's our spot. Ralph's on top of his game. That's what David says. Ralph's on top. Yeah, very good. Chodesh Tov. Achirim omrim. Achirim say, if someone throws a item in public property, and if he threw it 4 amot in public property, and there was somebody else who was standing in the public property, and he caught it, right? So what does it say like this? So it says, now, how did the second guy catch it? Did he catch it in a normal fashion? So the Gemara says, Im Amad Komo V'Kibel, if the second guy caught it, right? 2 guys are standing in public property, and we said on Shabbat, one of the toldot of one of the derivatives of carrying from private to public, public to private, you're not allowed to carry 4 amot in public property. You can't take an item in public property, pick up something in public property, and walk 4 amot, walk 6 to 8 feet. So the same way you can't walk 6 to 8 feet, you can throw the item 6 to 8 feet, right? Same way you can't carry from private to public, you can't throw from private to public. So when the 2 guys had it, but this person threw something, and the other person caught it. So now, when you want to catch something, sometimes you stand still and you catch it. Sometimes you run forward to catch it. Sometimes or you catch it earlier than where it would have landed. So im omad bimkomo v'kibel, if the second guy stood in his place and he caught the item, chayav, then the one who threw the item is in violation of Shabbat. And you have to go ahead. He threw it, he picked it up, he did the akira. And the fact that he threw it to the other guy, it's just like placing in the hand of the other guy, the Gemara says, which is a big chidush, because, the other guy had to catch it. He had to catch it. But it's as if when you put it in your hand, someone puts it in your hand. So we say this also like you place it in the guy's hand. And chayav, the person who threw it, is obligated to bring a korban chatat, a sin offering, of violating the Shabbat unintentionally. If he didn't know, he was forbidden to do that. However, okar, if the guy ran forward, mimkomo, the guy you were throwing it to ran forward to catch the item, vikibel, and he caught the item, potur. The thrower is potur because the item, let's say, would have went a further distance. But you jumped ahead and you made it land in a place where it wasn't going to go. By jumping forward to catch it earlier. So therefore, that's not called that the thrower did the hanacha, that the thrower put it down. And therefore, the person who threw it, would be exempt. So now the Gemara analyzes the first point of the Braita. It says, Komo v'kibel. See, and Rashi explains, if you would stay still, so then the thing arrived at the strength of the one who threw it. But if you ran forward, it was you who went ahead and made it happen. That's where it was caught. So the Gemara says, if you stood still and you received the item that he threw a baseball to you, he threw a Spalding ball to you, but when you caught it with your hands, the Gemara's understanding, and your hands are not 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. Doesn't have that sausage. You don't have it. What do we see from here? We don't require to have a place that's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. We see from this Braita, from the Achirim, that the Achirim says that you could catch something, and that would be that would be the hanacha, that would be the placing down of the person who threw it. Even though when you caught it with your hand. So we see a precedent. We find that there's an opinion called Achirim in the Braita, that says that that's called a violation, even though it wasn't 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. So too, he is the author of the Mishnah. That's what the Gemara wants to say. So the Gemara shoots back. Let me tell you, we only see that writer, that opinion says you don't need to rest on a place that's 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. That the hand is good enough to catch it. But how do you know that when it comes to the uprooting of the item, maybe the uprooting of the item is different than the placing down of the item? The Dilma, the Gemara says, Hanachahu de lo bi'ina. Maybe it's only the placing down of the item that you do not need 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. Ha'akira, but maybe the uprooting of the item, maybe bi'inat. Maybe we do make a difference between the uprooting and the placing down, because the Gemara says the Gemara has says you can make a distinction between the uprooting and the placing down. So maybe the fact that you found that achirim, that this opinion holds that the placing down, the hand could be good enough to catch. But how do we know that a hand could be good enough for the first step of the malacha, which is the uprooting of the item, taking the item from the hand? I mean, our Mishnah not only states that if you place it in the hand of someone, the Mishnah says it's a violation of Shabbat, and you don't require the surface of 15 inches by 15 inches, but even the uprooting of the item also you could do from a hand. We don't find that in this bright from Achirim. We only find that you could catch it. We didn't find that you could actually, if you would originally, if let's say the case we gave beforehand, there was something, there was on outside the wall in the public property, there was an item sitting on top of this ledge that I had, this tissue box, and a guy goes in and he takes a tissue from the tissue box on Shabbat, and he uproots the tissue and he walks for amot. We don't see from Achirim that would be in violation, because maybe the uprooting has to be from something more distinguished, something more important, like something in area 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. And the Gemara says, and even from this Braita, even from this Braita, Hanochanami, we don't see the fact that he said he caught it. He was mekabel. He received the item. He threw it to him in public property. Maybe he caught it with his garment. He stretched out his garment. The garment had 4 tvachim. Maybe that's how he caught it. Morning, Nathan. So the Gemara says there's no proof from that Braita that actually the hand would be good enough. That Braita only says the Braita does not say he caught it with his hand. The Braita says he received it. You could receive something with your hand. You could catch something with your garment. So maybe the Pashit Kanafeh, he stretched out the corners of his garment and he caught it. But even the hanacha, even the placing down would be on a place of 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Zera. So Rav Zera now wants to suggest a different answer. That, he's going to say that maybe you have to go ahead and have 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. And maybe the Mishnah is not going against Morning Mark. The Mishnah
Rabbi.
Against what we generally thought.
Hey, Ralph.
Morning. Ralph, Mark says hello. Nathan, Mark says hello.
Good morning, Nathan.
The Gemara says,
Good morning.
well, up to in the Gemara is we have our Mishnah stated that if you place an item in somebody's hand, or you uproot an item in someone's hand, the hand is considered a proper place of placing down, a proper place of uprooting, even though the hand is not 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. It's not around 15 inches by 15 inches. And the Gemara is under the impression that you have to have an area of 15 inches by 15 inches, 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, to be considered. That's called placing it down. If you place it on something which is not 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, it's not called placing. And if you uproot it from a place that's not 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, it's not called uprooting. So the Gemara is in search who is the author of our Mishnah that says this chidush, this novelty, that even though you didn't place it into something that's 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, even though you didn't uproot it from 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, you uproot it from a hand, or you place it in the hand that's also obligated. So now, the Gemara wants to say at this point, Omar Abba. Abba says, you got to understand the case of the Mishnah. By the way, Mr. Haber was feeling, I spoke to him last week, he said he's feeling a certain amount better. If anybody wants to reach out to him, feel comfortable to reach out to him. Amar Rab Abba. Rab Abba says, Matnitan, the Mishnah, Higon She'okra Mitraskal. The guy, the Balabayit, the one who was inside the house, had a basket. Let's say in the basket, he had the bread. And when the poor man went ahead and he took from the Balabayit, when he extended his hand from outside inside, he extended his hand inside to the basket, which is, the basket is 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. So the basket has that area of 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. And therefore, that would be the case of the Mishnah. Or honiach agabe trasko. Or he put it down when he uprooted from the cases that either he uprooted from a basket or he placed it into the basket. That the Balabayit had a basket, and when the poor man placed it into the Balabayit's basket that he was holding, or the poor man or the poor man himself had a basket. The poor man outside is, he collects his bread. He has his basket he collects from different people. So he has a basket and the Balabayit placed it into the basket. So that's what the Gemara wants to suggest. But the Gemara says, what do you mean? But Yadok Tani, the Mishnah stated, you placed it in his hand. The Mishnah didn't state that you placed it in the basket. So the Gemara says, Tani, you have to learn according to this opinion in the Mishnah, you have to have teraskal shabiyado. That the Mishnah, the proper text of the Mishnah is teraskal. That you placed it in a basket that's in his hand. So the Gemara says, okay, sounds like a nice answer, but it's not sufficient. Again, at this point, the Gemara wants to say that it meets the requirements of 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim because it went into a basket. But the Gemara says, Hatinach, that's good. That case would be Teraskal B'Reshut Yachid. That when the guy is in Reshut Yachid, the poor man, morning Asaf, if the poor man is in private property and he has his basket in his hand, and the Balabayit is in private property, the owner of the house is in private property, he has the basket in his hand, and the poor man places into the basket of the Balabayit. Okay. Or the poor man takes it out of the basket of the Balabayit. So both cases, that would fit the requirement of a 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim asaf, because it came from a basket. A basket has a surface of 4 tvachim, 15 inches by 15 inches, therefore meets those requirements. But the Gemara says, but remember, there was another case in the Mishnah. He put it into the hand, he put it into the hand, so to speak, of the poor man who was in public property. And now we're saying, not that he put it in the hand of the poor man, because the hand doesn't meet the requirements of 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. Rather, you place it where? In the basket of the poor man who was in public property. So now we're getting into a different question. The Gemara is going to say, what's the issue? A basket that's in the hand of a poor man in public property, that basket should not be considered Reshut Harabim. It should be considered Reshut Yachid. It should be considered private property. Why should it be considered private property? Because the Gemara is going to say that the basket is higher than 10 tvachim. Let's say he's standing, and then he's holding the basket, and he's holding more than, let's say, 40 inches from the ground. And this basket should have when you're holding something that has that's higher than 10 tvachim, and it has 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. So there's an opinion in the Gemara that says that we can use the basket as if the sides of the basket. Good morning. We want to say hello to Ralph's grandchild. Good morning. Welcome to the class.
Say hi.
Hi.
Hi. So if you're holding the basket, if make believe this is the basket, and this would be 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, so there's something called good. There's an opinion that says the good means the wall of this basket we could look at as if this comes down, and as if this comes down, and therefore we have this area becomes a private area. So if this item is higher than 10 tvachim off the ground, and this has a certain surface of 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, so there's an opinion that says in the Gemara that says we look at it as if this whole item is as if this wall's down in the morning, coming down, and this space would be considered private space. It wouldn't be considered public. This specific thing would not be considered public. So that's the Gemara's question. And the Mishnah states if you handed it from private to this man outside, it went from private to public. But if you're telling me that this Pascal, including this basket, it has the surface to 4 him, so this halachic idea of good, that the walls will perceive it as if the walls will go down, should kick in. That's what the Gemara that's gonna be the next setup of the Gemara. So the Gemara says, it should be considered a yachid. And the fact that you're telling me the case of the Mishnah is when he holds the basket, and we say it's not considered private area, we look at the basket that he's holding while he's in public as public property. So the Gemara says, Leima delok Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Should we say that our Mishnah, good morning, Nathan, is not in sync with the opinion of Yossi Rabbi Yehuda? Because why? The Tanya, we learned to the right. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says, now we're returning the page. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda said, now we're 5A2. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. If someone stuck a reed in public property, a stick, he stuck a stick in public property, Uberosho, and we're saying this reed is 10 tvachim high. It's a nice tall reed. It's, let's say, around 40 inches off the ground. And Uberosho traskal. And you attach to the top of this reed, top of the stick, a basket. Like a little pole with a basket on top of this pole, top of this reed. And Zorak. And a person went ahead and he threw an item from public property, v'nach al gabav, and it went on top of this. Let's say you were even it didn't go 4 amot. It didn't go. Let's say it went 2 amot. You're standing in public property, and you threw into the basket. You played a little basketball, right? Basketball from the red basket, right? You threw into the basket. I presume that's how it started out. I don't know, but I never thought of that before. But you threw it into that. So we say that's called violation of Shabbat, even though it didn't go 4 amot in public property, but you're in public, standing in public, and you threw into this basket, which was 2 amot away, let's say, and it went in, and it landed in the basket. It rested in, and we consider that as if it landed in private property. Right, so if it landed on the floor, then it would not be, then it has to have gone 4 amot in order to be violating the Shabbat. He's a good throw. So he's only 2 amot. Simon, you can even just flip it in. He's only 2 amot away. He's only about. Okay, but if it went exactly where he was planning to go, so. The next time you go to the amusement park and you do that little, that game for $1 and you throw it into the basket, think about our Gemara. That you think about our Gemara about throwing it to the basket. And he threw it into the basket. Chayav, he's obligated. He's violating the Shabbat by doing that. We consider the basket as if it's private property, because why is the basket, even though the basket is standing over public property, but because the basket has 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, and it's 10 tvachim high, we look at as if the sides of the basket as if it came down. So it's like imaginary walls, called the halachic walls that you don't see. Right, 10 tvachim off the earth, but it's 4 tvachim. But it's 4 tvachim wide by 4 tvachim wide. Let's say 15 inches by 15 inches. And therefore, when we look at it as if this comes down, so as if this is a walled, right, exactly. And it's a private property. So the Gemara says, and the Ikra of Yosef Yehuda, because if you're going to say, good morning, Mark. If you're going to say, Mark, the Gemara is, sorry, I had a mind to bring you over. The Gemara's over there. The Ikra of Yosef Yehuda, if the opinion is like Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, Poshat Balabayit et Yodo Lachutz. If the Balabayit were on 5A2, we're in the first column. The Gemara says the Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. If the opinion of our Mishnah is like Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, so Poshat Balabayit et Yodo Lachutz. If the man stuck his hand outside, the guy on the inside, and he put it into the hand of the poor man. And we're establishing the Mishnah now that the poor man was holding a basket. So according to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, that basket, if it's 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, and it's higher than 10 tvachim on the ground, it should be a private property. If it's private property, the guy on the inside who placed it in the basket should not be chayav, should not be in violation of the Shabbat, because it went from private to private, if the basket has the status of private property. But he's taking something from private to private, and he should not be chayav. So the Gemara says like this: Afilu Taim Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. You could even say that the Mishnah could even fit like Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, because the question is, where is that? What's the case of the Mishnah, and what's the case of Yosef Yehuda? Rabbi Yosef Yehuda's case, as Nathan said before, was that the basket was higher than 10 tvachim. So Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says when the basket is higher than 10 tvachim, it has a status, as remember we said that public property, the airspace of public property, that's the violation of Shabbat, is within 10 tvachim of the ground. But when it's higher than 10 tvachim, higher than 40 inches is not airspace that we'll see more about as we learn the Gemara's more. If you throw something in public property higher than, if it went higher than 10 tvachim, and that would not be a violation of Shabbat on a Torah level. Only if you underhanded something lower, it was within lower than 10 tvachim, within 40 inches of the ground. So Hatam over there, when you stuck this pole in public property, and you had a basket on top, and he considers that private property, that's when it was higher than 10 tvachim. However, Hacha in our Mishnah, when it's the Mata Me'asara, when the basket, if it's lower than 10 tvachim, so then even Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says, I'm not going to consider this like private property. But to be considered private, you have to have a height of 10 tvachim, and just like a sukkah, like Nathan says, the sukkah has to have a minimum height. The wall of a sukkah to be considered a wall have to be 40 inches high. You're not around 40 inches high, something like that, within a few inches. But if you're less than 10 tvachim, that's not a wall. It's not considered a real private area. So if it's less than 10 tvachim and the guy is standing outside, the case of our Mishnah, the poor man has his basket. He doesn't have his basket like this. It's not on top of a reed you're sticking a basket on top of something, a pole, which is high up, he's holding the basket like this. He's holding the basket, he's coming in with his hand, which is less than 10 tvachim from the ground, right? And therefore he is, by the way, you ever see, you have to be, I mentioned once before, front of your house, if you have a front lawn, right? And then that front lawn opens up to the street. So if you have bushes, some people are very careful. They make sure if you want to carry from your front lawn, if you want to be able to carry in your front lawn area, from your house to your front lawn, if your front lawn opens directly into public property, you have to do something. You have to make, they put up the side posts and the thing. But if you have it's called the surat petach, but if you have bushes in front of your house, that your bushes that lead to the public property, and that separates from the public property. If the bushes are 10 tvachim high, or you have a gate that's 10 tvachim, if you have something that's not less than 10 tvachim high, that's not considered sufficient. But if you would have something all around their house, their front, what'd you say? It has to be right. The discussion, it might have to. No, but also you can have an entranceway. I mean, that's just like every house has an opening. You know what I'm saying? You're allowed to have an opening. There's halach. You don't need a gate, as long because an opening is okay because that's called an entranceway. It's clearly a private area. Now I would have to look in the halacha again. It could be you might need to have majority enclosed. If you don't have majority enclosed, then it's definitely no good. But if you have, I would think again we have to check it up practically. But if you have majority, it's enclosed, so that an opening that might not be a problem. It's clear that this is a separate private area because it's majority enclosed. You know what I'm saying? I remember I was in England with someone's house, and that was the issue. They had right, yeah. So right, and some might even say 10 tvachim is not even 40, maybe 37 inches. Exactly have to 30. Yeah, so this would be a good if you would have this in front. And that leads, and then right outside of the street, so this is considered a blockage. It's clear, so people will know not to carry. You won't carry into the public property because you have this. There's a definitely, separates it from the public property. So that's what we're talking. Right, a roof of the public space, at least on a Torah level.
Let's say the basket instead of being like this, is like this. So there's actually a roof. And it's below 40 inches. And you put the ball or you toss the ball into there. Is that a private space because it's less than 40 inches?
Yeah, so you're talking about the basket.
But it has a roof.
The basket has the roof, and there was a hole in the basket. So you're saying the basket is like this, and then the ball comes in here. So you're saying that maybe there should not be a public. Right. Your question is that called roofed? Because we said if there's something above, if you want to say if this is the public property.
Makes it private.
At least I don't know if it makes it private. It's definitely not a violation of the Shabbat, Torah violation of Shabbat. Right. A roof, because the Gemara says
Lower below
40 inches. Right. And it has an opening like this. That goes.
Before you get there, it went from private to public. Below 40 now it's public.
According to the stance of the Gemara, right?
Put a cover on top.
Right. The basket. Right. Let's see. You turn the basket sideways, like Nathan's saying. You turn the basket side here, like this. You put let's say this is the basket, and the thing goes right in over here, but have a cover over here. So Nathan is saying
less than 40 inches. Like you say, a building or a sukkah or whatever, you put a roof on it, I don't know that it changes it because I don't think it qualified to begin with.
Yeah, but he said if let's say if the top of it would be public property, right? The top, if you're standing in the street and you would be holding a basket on, I'm holding a basket like this, right? And you put the thing in the basket, we're saying that's public property, right? Less than 40 inches, and I'm holding the basket. So now his question is, if it's like this, and now the question is, what's called public over here? This is this is a roof over this. That's his issue. He's saying this is a roof over this. This should not. If you're going to say this is public, his question maybe this should make this not public. You know, this could be public. Top of this could be public, right? Because this is not there's air on top of it. There's no roof on top of this. But he's saying maybe inside here. He said the inside here should not be. I don't know, right. It's just a good question. Maybe it can't be Torah violation because it's roofed. Inside of here has a roof on top. That's his Nathan's point. The case under 40 inches. The case of the Gemara is he's holding the basket like this. So therefore, and he's putting the item into the basket. There's no roof on top, less than 40 inches. The Gemara is saying that should be a Torah violation, but you place it in its public property. It's in public property. So that's the Gemara wants to say. So the Gemara says, Kashale l'Rabavohu. Rabavohu had a question like that. You're going to tell me that the Mishnah is talking about a basket in his hand? Mikatani traska biyado. We don't find the Mishnah didn't state the word that he was holding a basket. You know, if it was holding a basket, the Mishnah have said there's a basic word that should have been mentioned in the Mishnah. Hayaduk tani. The Mishnah talks about you placing the guy's hand. So hand sounds like there's no basket here. Because if it was a basket, you should have just said he placed it in the traska. Should be yadu. Elo Ravavu. So Ravavu says, you know what the case of the Mishnah is? Kegon sheshishel yado lemata mishlosha. He went ahead and he put his hand. He lowered his hand within 3 tvachim of the ground. So there's something something is within 3 tvachim of the ground. 3 tvachim is around 11 inches. It has status of the ground, as Mark said. You know, for instance, if you make a wall, right? And the wall is off the ground, there's a certain space. There's a space between the bottom of the wall and the ground. Technically, what I recall, you have up to 3 tvachim to be off the ground, there's space. But if as long as the wall comes, let's say there's a space between the bottom of the wall and the ground. So if it's within 11 inches, we consider as if it's there, as if it's considered within 11 inches of the ground. Within 3 tvachim, it's like it's there. It's like it's part of the ground itself. So if your hand is lower than is within 3 tvachim of the ground, so that makes as if the item is on the ground. When you place it in your hand, so that's what the Gemara says. Either you lowered your hand within 3 tvachim, kibla, and you received it over there. So the Gemara says, how could you tell me that it's talking about that the poor man or the balabayit lowered his hand within 3 tvachim of the ground? It says that he was standing. Standing doesn't sound like he's, if you're standing, so you have to bend down more. So we'll see tomorrow. I know people will be late to davening. We'll leave it more for tomorrow. I want to wish everyone. So tomorrow, what time works? Is it 6:45 or 7:45? What works for people? Right. So what works better for people? 6:45 or 7:45?
6:45 for me. No, I don't know. Tomorrow could be 9 o'clock.
Okay, so for you, 7:45 is better. 7:45 is better. Either way,
7:45.
Okay, so I think we're gonna do 7:45, Ralph. If it's difficult for you that time, so is that right?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Okay, so have the class at 7:45 tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you all. Happy Chodesh Tov and happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. Yeah.
You too.
So what parasha do we read? We read the Chodesh Tov parasha, or do we read the Hanukkah parasha?
We should read both today.
Okay, both. Okay, good.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Don't forget, a lot going on.